Hello, everyone, and welcome to this exclusive Retail Wire webinar featuring an expert panel discussing the theme Rethinking and Redefining the Role of Physical Stores. Your host, Al McLean, will give us started in a moment. Before we begin, I would like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's meeting. You have joined the meeting using your computer speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the telephone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. At any time throughout the webinar, you may submit your text questions for today's presenter and panelists by typing your questions into the questions chat pane of the control panel. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session. Today's meeting is being recorded. As a registrant, you will receive an email within the next couple of days providing you with a link to the recording and a PDF copy of the slides. And now, here's Al McLean, CEO and co-founder of Retail Wire, to get the webinar underway.
Thank you, Keely. Appreciate it, and welcome everybody. We've got a big crowd and we've got a big panel as well, so we're glad to have you here. Thanks to the panel for participating. So today we're talking about rethinking and redefining the role of physical stores. And obviously a lot has changed in the past year and a half, so we'll get into a lot of interesting subjects. And also I want to thank StoreForce and Dave Loat in particular for sponsoring today's webinar. So there's very quick background about me. More importantly, Retail Wire, we are the largest expert discussion community in the retailing industry, and we have a panel of some of the best minds in the industry called the Brain Trust. We have about 125 members of that panel, and we have a couple of those folks with us today. Instead of the usual presentation that we do up front, followed by a panel discussion, we're really going to focus on the enlightened minds that we have with us today and the panel. So we're going to get right into the panel discussion. We're going to do some polling as well. So hopefully it'll be a real engaging format for you. You can see the 4 topics that we're going to be discussing, and you can see the panel that we have with us today, and hopefully you also see them on the screen. First, we have Ron Harries, who is Senior Vice President and Head of Retail at Fabletics. You can see his background here. Since we have 5 panelists, I'm not going to read everybody's bio, but just give you a chance to look through it. But you can see he's started at Sears in 1987, and he's obviously come a long ways and now is SVP and Head of Retail at Fabletics. Secondly, we have William, or Billy Bennett, Director of Retail Data Analytics at the Journeys Group. He started there in 2000 as a sales associate, and he worked as a store manager for over a decade, and you can see that when he went to the home office, he's really come a long way as well. So welcome, William, aka Billy. Then we have Dave Loat, who is president and co-founder of StoreForce. He has over 25 years of experience in retailing as well, and he was a founding partner of Carrabba's, and you can see he's done a lot working with over 100 retailers in his career. Then we have Andrew Blatherwick, who is Chairman Emeritus of Relex Solutions, and Andrew's career is so long and so accomplished that we don't have time to go into all of it today, but welcome, Andrew. And last but certainly not least, Cathy Hotka. Cathy Hotka and Associates, and you can see previously she was with NRF and the American Petroleum Institute's IT Council. She's worked on Capitol Hill, she's worked at the White House, she's kind of been everywhere, and now she's with us today, so welcome, Cathy. So if any of you want to check out further information on our panelists, you can go back over the slides that we'll send to you later and check out their bio. So we want to kind of kick things off by asking the audience a poll question. So Keely, if you could go ahead and launch the poll for us. So the question that we're asking you is, do you think that retailers have adapted quickly enough to the needs of customers, given the increased digital activity now impacting stores? So you can pick the one that best represents your answer. So yes, almost all have, or many have executed well, or most have not executed their plans well, or no, there is still a long way to go. So basically, do you think the retailers have adapted quickly enough to the needs of customers with all the increased digital activity going along now? So as those come in, if we could let it go 15 more seconds, Keely, to see what people are saying, and then you could go ahead and close the poll so that we can see the results. And there we go. So you can see that close to half of you think that many retailers have executed well, and about 36%, or about a third, feel that retailers have not, and almost 20% of you saying there's still a long way to go. And interestingly, nobody, and we have a pretty large audience today, is saying almost all have. So if we could just go to the next slide, and we'll get into, so now what we're going to do is we're going to have, hopefully, if there's enough time, 4 sets of discussion questions. And we need to go back one slide, Keely. There we go. So this is kind of the background on this question, adapting retail to the influx of online demand in store. So Dave Loat from StoreForce, would you mind giving us a little background on what this topic's all about?
Sure, 100%. This is sort of foundation or center to what we see going on in retail right now. It's not that the digital transformation of the store wasn't already underway when the pandemic hit, but our clients have told us they've taken their 5-year roadmap and they've condensed it or compressed it into 6 months to accommodate the change. And it really is about what are the strategies to get products into the customer's hand. And given the challenges and with capacity limits and stores closing and then reopening, having product available and then being able to deliver it to customers has sort of been the hallmark of success within retail. We're super proud to have a great client base. The innovation that we saw going out in the field has been really incredible in the last year. Hopefully things have calmed down, and some of the learnings from last year will be able to carry forward into the future. The most important learning I think that we had from the whole pandemic episode, if you will, is that the role of the store as being the center of the brand touch point has just been reinforced. It is the area that the consumer or the customer interacts with your brand, and we're so proud of how our clients have responded through this pandemic. We have a few on this panel with us today, but it really is the role of the store has been reinforced to the point where everyone is now talking about how can I open more stores, how can I open stores in the right geographies. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Al.
That's kind of an unforeseen consequence, I think, at the beginning of the pandemic. Who would have thought that, a lot of people would be rolling out new stores a year later? I mean, it was all about stores closing, and now it seems to be about stores opening. So let's go. So we sort of have 4 sets of questions, 2 each. So segueing here, in the last year, what in-store trends had the greatest impact on operations and the workforce, and what have been the most effective tactics to satisfy online demand in stores? So, William, let's start with you as one of the 2 retailers in the room. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I mean, consumers definitely voted that they like going to stores. Dave kind of noted that, and as someone who manages our workforce payroll, that's something we've believed in for a long time. And not to say in April at the beginning of the pandemic, we were like, okay, this is going to be great. But the data starts to show that customers want to be able to go to the mall and they want to be able to visit your store, whether they shop online as well too. And I think the biggest change for us is getting that merged from our workforce and our employees in the store who are commission-driven sales associates, and they're trying to focus on their store. understanding that the web is just another store that's part of our chain, and satisfying that customer's need, whether we're shipping to them because they ordered off of our website, is keeping them within our brand, and we'll probably see them in store next time. It's not moving them over to the web permanently. It's not losing a customer. It's actually keeping a customer within the branding, and continues to help their footprint within that store.
So do you feel that online shoppers are actually moving back to the store, or is there just, how do you see that going?
I think it's been back and forth for a long time, where they're very comfortable doing both. But when given a whole year of an opportunity to just order online, a lot of them braved pandemic conditions and restrictions and mask requirements, and forcefully wanted to be in our stores and shop in person. For whatever reason that is, the feeling they get, the service they get. And so I think it's just very, very fluid now. I mean, it's going to be whatever strikes them in that moment. They might be bored at home and order something online. It doesn't mean that they're not mostly an in-store shopper. And I think what's changed the most is our field employees being able to get a sense of that now. You look at where traffic trends are, and in some states stronger than others. Some are all the way back, some are up, but there's still plenty of customers coming into stores all over the place, and it's a customer with urgency to purchase. They're there for a reason, and so that's really helped our teams out there see that the work that they're putting in, shipping a ton of orders as well, is just part of the holistic approach of keeping journeys healthy for us.
So Ron, what are you seeing? Are you seeing the same things that William is seeing, or something different?
Yeah, I'd say similar. I just quickly to start, I do want to recognize the about 1,000 people that we have work for us in the field that have been just courageous through this entire pandemic. So my thanks to the team for the hard work that they're putting in serving our members and guests, and really each other. I'd say to add to what William said is one of the trends that's been really interesting for us to see is the increase of buy online, return in store, or buy online, exchange in store. But that really has increased in a really big way for us. It was already very large. We're basically an e-com platform company that introduced retail in 2015. So obviously we have a lot of online shopping to begin with, but just that amount of traffic that's now coming into the store, which gives us an opportunity to interact with these folks in a new and exciting way. That's been a really big one for us as well. In addition to other just omni activity we're seeing, I think that's been one that I would encourage others to really look at and embrace. It's been big.
Cathy, I know you interact with a lot of retailers, especially on the IT side. What do you hear them saying?
Well, and I manage the Store Operations Council. I think the thing that is most striking to me is the change in the role of store associates. So, a lot of us think of store associates as the people who fold the shirt and put it in a bag. But over the last year and a half, those people really, to Ron's point, really have been courageous. They are in charge of customer liaison. They're the face of the company for these customers who, these are the people who are putting that bag in their trunk. They need better skills than they've ever had before, and they need more sophisticated tools than they've ever had. And that's changing the whole way that associates are viewed.
And Andrew, what are you seeing?
I think there's been an awful lot of hype about retail is dead, everything's going online. We've heard it all so many times, all the doom and gloom merchants. It's not happening. I mean, the stores are still very much an integral part of the whole of the retail operation. They remain that. As Dave said earlier, they're becoming more and more core to that whole operation. And you get retailers like, let's say, someone like Best Buy, who are now retraining all their staff to be able to not only work in the shop, but be able to pick online orders, to even be able to go out and deliver them. Retailers have always been adapted. They're very dynamic. They're changing all the time, and that's just what's been happening over the last year. Yeah, things have speeded up, we've never been through this situation before, but retailers have adapted incredibly well.
And so back to you, William. So specifically, what are you doing differently than you were doing a year ago in terms of driving some of this online traffic into stores, or are you even trying to do that?
So, you know, it'd be dishonest to say different. One area we're very lucky is we have had a ship from store program for several decades now with Journeys. We've been doing that probably about 21, 22 years. And so you have access when we were closed to all this inventory that we were able to get into customers' hands. And so that's one way we were able to take a different approach. And not to echo it, but it's important enough to say, with a lot of courageous frontline help from our employees getting back out into stores even before they were open and just packing up orders and getting them out to our customers. Some of them as much as 2 months before we actually reopened the store, but just coming in all through the week and getting those orders out. So we had a really great program in place for a long time that our stores were very familiar with in fulfilling those store orders and getting that inventory out there. I mean, being able to open up over 1,000 stores worth of inventory to the web during the closure, obviously I don't need to explain what value that brought. Where it has changed, and we were kind of already on the roadmap, but you touched on speeding things up, having a BOPUS program in place and getting some of that, being able to do curbside and stuff like that, we've got to move forward on, because we didn't have some of those tools available to us, which would have helped.
Ron, are you doing anything completely different than you were doing before the pandemic?
Yeah, I would say we've amplified some things that we were doing prior to the pandemic. One of those would be appointment selling. We had our own version of appointment selling, but now it's really been amplified to the point where a lot of people, they want to shop kind of on their terms, before hours, after hours. So that's been a really big win for us. And we are driving traffic back to retail again, and we're excited that that's we're back at that stage. But we do a lot of in-store events and things like that that drive a lot of traffic into our stores. That's been critically important for us. And yeah, I think as I look at the roadmap on what's going to kind of come to a store near you in the coming months, it really is an exciting time for retail to see all of this innovation that has really just been accelerated over the last year.
All right, so I guess we'll move to our next topic. Is there anything anybody wanted to add before we move on?
Yeah, Al, just to pick up on something that William was talking about, I think one of the really big things that's happened over the last year is retailers and their customers really appreciate the store staff now, way more than they used to. And I think if there's one great thing that's come out of all this, and God forbid we didn't need this for it to happen, but people have really started appreciating those store staff more.
That is a good point, and well deserved for the staff.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll move on here, and I just want to remind everybody that if you have questions for any of the panelists, you can use your chat function to send those in, and the earlier you get those in, the better chance that we'll get to your specific question. So here is our next topic. Retail is reevaluating store performance. So Dave, would you be kind enough to give us an overview on this one?
Yeah, this is, again, this was existing pre-pandemic. Pandemic just accelerated as well. But if you think about the role of physical store, 20 years ago, you would have demand generation and order fulfillment in the same store. You would walk, you'd cross the lease line, you'd see something you'd like, and then you'd buy it. And what's sort of happened with all these digital transactions, again, trying to be frictionless and get as much product into the customer's hands as possible, is that there's a break in between that demand generation and that order fulfillment. They now can take place in all kinds of different places. Demand generation can occur online, and I can go and fulfill it in the store. I can see something in the store, but they don't have my size, and Endless Aisle says it can be shipped from the store. So what's happened is that there's all of these activities happening in the store that didn't used to happen because we've broken that chain between demand generation and order fulfillment. And all that labor that's occurring in the store in order to drive and fulfill those orders, the old models don't work anymore. And when I say that, the old models used to be, well, I'm forecasting $1 million in sales and I'm going to have a 10% wage percent, so I have $100,000 to spend on labor. Well, if you're not giving the store credit for the sales that they're doing the order fulfillment on, how are you funding that labor in the future? So now, do you have a two-tier model of funding labor where you're now starting to look at the non-sell, the order fulfillment side of the business separately from the demand generation? But even if you're generating demand in a store, how do you, and it's fulfilled online, how do you give the store credit for that? So there's this grayness with how you evaluate what store performance is. Part of our solution, part of our recommendation is to look at the store as a market and look at all the activity that takes place within that market, including the online and e-com, and try and evaluate those two quadrants, those two sections, so the demand generation, order fulfillment, and then try and figure out how you're going to use that when you get into labor planning or reward recognition. Traffic in mall stores in the US has been declining for 15 years. If you look at just my brick and mortar sales in isolation, your store associates are going to think that I'm the next victim of the retail apocalypse. I'm going down year on year, and they're going to go home and tell their mom, I got to find a new job. And in reality, that's couldn't be further from the truth, that the store is continuing to be that driver of the brand footprint. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Al.
All right, thank you, Dave. So with that, so we have sort of two questions that relate to this. So historical data has become less valuable as a tool for comps. So how do you compare targets? And then the work that stores put in affects other channels, so how do we measure that? So let's start again with the retailers in the room. So Ron, how do you do all that? How do you make sense of it all?
Yeah, it's a good question. We measure performance, like in 2021, we're measuring performance in a lot of different ways. We're definitely comparing to comp in 2019. In 2019, our four-wall retail comp was up 38%. It was an amazing year for us. So it's very important that we get back to 2019 levels plus, which we are there and beating at this point. So a lot of comparison goes into that. We compare to budget. The budget is built off of 2019, and it's bigger than 2019. So we compare to that as well. I think really interesting about Fabletics, and it's somewhat unique to us, is we have a member model. So we acquire new members in our retail stores. It's a big part of our acquisition channel. And when we do that, we're able to precisely view the data and the activity of that member. So as I look at kind of question number 2 there, and I look at how we measure the impact of the retail store on the overall business, we can do so in a very precise way. And I think to Dave's point, we view it really as this market that we're able to capture with brick and mortar, with physical, that helps the brand in such a big way that, I think we're just very fortunate to be able to measure and understand the importance, which is part of the reason, we had 36 stores at the end of, or at least going into the closure, we had 36 stores. We opened 14 stores last year. Because we understand the value of that acquisition channel and what that retail member brings to the table. So it's somewhat unique to us, but how we also measure performance.
And William, what's going on over at Journey?
Question 1 is like the whole second half of last year for me. What do we do, right? Going into this new year, and 2019 similarly for us, from a company health standpoint, we knew that we wanted to drive back to those numbers. 2018 and 19 were both really strong years for Journeys, and frankly, we invested, like we talked about earlier, we invested in management wages for the employees who got back out there, to reopen the stores, and made sure that our compensation models were fair and increasing for them and what they were dealing with out there. So you know, it's a sales-driven company, so the top line has to match the bottom line. And we really had to take an approach of 2019, and then frankly, some of, you know, certain areas of the country have experienced an increase beyond, you know, what you would have guessed ahead of time. And so even taking a handful of stores and planning them up against 2020 because they just increased so much and the velocity continued to go from there in some of these areas that maybe opened up quicker, or outdoor centers and things of that nature. So we really had to kind of piece it together. But overall, it's really taking the 2019 numbers, creating targets within a system, and having one number for each store so that they know what they're looking at. All of our awards and rewards are based on the target number, whereas, you know, for 30 plus years it's been based on comp. If you beat comp, that's how you're going to get rewarded. So we had to change all that for this year and have them looking at their targets only. And the piece of it that we're still evolving is that web-driven approach and the orders and everything that they're fulfilling. It used to be small enough where it was just part of the work that they had to do. And as it's grown, at the very least, we need to reward our highest churners. And so we've started to layer in different awards at our sales meeting and stuff for our top fulfillers and things of that nature. But as it continues to grow, that's probably not enough, and we're, you know, we'll keep looking at what the next right thing is, because it's a big part of their day now. It's a bigger part than it ever was when I ran a store, and so we definitely have to adapt.
And Andrew, what are you hearing in terms of the way retailers are treating 2020? Are they just kind of trying to throw that out?
Yeah, I think as the guys have said already, comp doesn't work anymore. We know from lots of research that every time a retailer opens a store, their online business in that area goes up. If they close the store, the online business in that area goes down. The two are so interlinked that you've really got to start looking at it as a total business, as Dave said, a marketplace. I think the other key thing is when you're looking at trying to staff the store, but also when you're looking at the total business, we've got to break down the silos. There are still a lot of companies, a lot of retailers I see who are still very silo driven. They have a management team who's looking after online. They have a management team who's looking after stores. That really has to be broken down. Senior management have got to get hold of it and start looking at it as a holistic view of their retail operation. You can't have silos anymore. It doesn't work. They're just too interlinked.
And Cathy, yeah, I mean, what are you hearing from the members of the council?
Yeah, Andrew's exactly correct, and the members of the council agree with him as well. Store performance is going to be a question mark for a lot of companies until we can get our hands on all of the various data that we put into these stores that is coming out of the stores. We've got all kinds of new technology in there, which we're probably not analyzing sufficiently. There's still a little bit of an element of voodoo there. And as we get better at analyzing and putting into practice plans, you know, based on that data analysis, the better off we'll be.
So
yeah, I mean,
was that Dave was going to say something?
Well, let Billy go first.
I was just going to say, you know, the traditional departments, everyone has their data person. You know, there's the marketing data and the catalog data, and the, you know, operations teams looking at stuff, and the sales team. And you know, my group is newer within our company, but that's definitely the direction to go, is to break down some of the walls, as Andrew was saying, and share and make sure that we're all looking at it holistically, because it's more related to each other than we've treated it in the past.
Right. Yeah, I just wanted to bring in the whole 2019 comping to 2019 or comping to 2020. I believe that we have a handout to distribute at the end of this that's to comp or not to comp, which really deals as that topic. And looking at a top line sales number, I think that that's a reasonable, you know, starting point. You need some place to go from. But if you look at the KPIs that really drive performance in the store, they're around quality of sale, which is the basket size, or quantity of sale, your conversion rate. And those two metrics have changed dramatically since 2019. The intent to purchase when somebody crosses your lease line is way higher now than it was back in 2019. And that affects those metrics, as it also affects how much they want to buy. The basket size has increased, your conversion rate has gone up. So in some metrics, you really need to look at what your trend is and try and figure out how to challenge each store to push those metrics a little further.
Okay. Anybody else have anything on this? All right.
Just to pick up on what Cathy was saying, that the amount of data we now have is huge. We have to use that data effectively. Got to use it better than we maybe have done in the past.
All right. So with that, we'll move on. So our next topic is the changing role of field leaders in the new retail. So we'll kind of move through this one pretty quickly so we can get to your questions. So Dave, could you give us a little background?
Sure. I think when we started StoreForce, the real need in the market was there was no tool for your field manager, and your field manager to us is your most important role in the retail stores. They're your coach, your recruiter, your auditor, your cheerleader, you name it. You've given them all those responsibilities, but really no tools to go and do their job. Then the pandemic hits, and to William and Ron's points earlier, Ron particularly in terms of how your field staff respond, how your store staff responded to this pandemic, it was heartwarming to see that the passion and the dedication to fulfilling the customer's needs at the store level, and that was driven largely by your field managers never giving up. What they had to do in terms of the shift, though, is now all of a sudden they couldn't go see the stores. They couldn't go visit the stores. There was capacity limits and it was impossible to travel. You couldn't get on an airplane. So now we started with virtually being the field leader and virtually visiting the store. And out of that, we sort of saw that a lot of retailers have sort of realigned portfolios so that maybe a field leader has more stores to look after, but the tools have changed. But the job responsibility hasn't. And with that, I think I'll turn it back to Al in the essence of time.
And the interesting thing about those virtual field visits is, I'm sure we've all experienced the virtual doctor's appointment. And there's some things you can do and some things you can't do. So there are limitations. So our next question revolves around field leader change. So how does the lack of physical presence of field leaders affect in-store operations? And what tools do you see as most helpful in keeping field leaders and associates more nimble? So, William, as one of the two retailers, come to you.
Yeah, I mean, our district managers, our field leaders, completely the glue that held everything together through this. Closed down on March 17th or 18th, all of our stores. And, we recognized pretty quickly that keeping management staff on for whenever a reopen was going to be something that was very important to us. And you can't really do that from a corporate office. The relationships don't exist, no matter what plan you have from here. So it started with our field leaders, one, really being better at developing further the relationships that they had, keeping up with their teams from, on the phone, keeping up, doing Zoom calls and stuff while all of our stores were dark. And then there's just not even a phrase to talk about how many hats that they put on to get the stores reopened. As of a year ago today, we had 950 stores reopened. And that again was because our district managers remained nimble, kept the store managers and our assistant manager, co-managers engaged and in place and ready to come back when it was safe to do so, when we had a plan for reopening our stores safely for them and our customers. But without that relationship in between, so it's like everything they've always had to be good at, the people skills, being a shrink, being a psychiatrist, being someone to talk to, that just had to be amped up even further beyond work. There's the fear of going back and working in the store under the conditions that existed and what the responsibilities were. And I mean, I know we couldn't have even done half of what we were able to do without our district managers. And they've carried that burden through the year as we've closed some states back down and reopened, and you know, but question two, I'll just say real quick, it's really been like what all we're doing here is that virtual touch point, Zoom, and getting comfortable having partner meetings over a phone, whereas back in the, you know, it would be weird to have a coaching conversation virtually or over the phone. You would have actually felt blown off before, but that's become the new norm. So that you have to be able to have a serious conversation over you know, the phone or Zoom technology. So,
do you think that that's going to continue indefinitely or permanently?
It's a tool in the toolbox. You know, I don't think it will become the norm. We definitely want to be out there and working and with our teams, but you know, we operate in every state and you know, province and in different countries, and sometimes if you're a flight away, if you've been able to start developing relationships much better through this new tool, I think that you should lean on it more heavily instead of what used to be, I'll fly out and see you once every 6 weeks or whatever that is. You should definitely take advantage of this newfound way of doing things.
And Ron, what tools are you using, and are you seeing the same thing? I know you have a smaller store base, but
Yeah, much smaller than that. We're up to 55 as of today. Opened a couple more last week. So there's a lot of work is being done and was done really kind of through the closure. As I look back at that, it seems like so long ago, but when we closed stores and had to pivot very quickly, just that role of that field leader was so important to all of the work that we wanted to do. We made the same decision not to lay off any of our workforce. And we put a very big number of our retail associates to work in our call centers and doing social moderation and doing different things like that from their own homes. I go back and just the amount of inspiration that our field leaders had to provide, they had to uplift, they had to elevate. They were dealing with so many emotions and so many different things, but that really hasn't changed, right? So as we've gone through all the different phases of reopening, all of that anxiety still exists. All the just everything that people are dealing with in their own lives is amplified and has increased. And our teams have had to just remain, you know, just so adept at dealing with those situations. And for me, that's the importance of these tools and different things that have been developed or were already developed and just continue to get better. It allows a field leader to do their job at a very high level. Which is exactly what technology and tools and systems should do. The need for a field leader to uplift will never go away, right? That really is, they need to be great leaders. They need to bring people along and get them to do things they might not do without that leader in place. And that's the importance of these tools and systems that really help them do their job in a very big way. Yeah, I think that's critical.
And Cathy, at the council, what are you seeing?
Well, one of the things that we found was that the communications tools that we had pre-pandemic were not going to cut it because there was so much news coming in, much of it, you know, that didn't agree. And which version of the truth are you believing today? Is your county closed or is your county open? What are your recommended hours? You know, standard operating procedure just changed. We're doing this instead. And it was very difficult, not only for associates, but also for field managers and DMs to keep up with all of this. And many of them installed new communications tools where they could figure out what the real version of the truth was and then put that out there. It's very important.
And Andrew, maybe we'll give you the last word on this one.
Yeah, I think, as the guys were saying, the field management have had to be so adaptable. They're doing so many different things. But I think what's interesting is, for many of them, they've actually become a lot more efficient in that they're not spending travel time. They're not going to stores maybe as often. So they may be more efficient in their use of their time. But what we've got to do is make sure they're also just as effective or more effective. And using information, using the data they've got, using all the new systems that are out there is the key to making them effective as well as efficient. come back to Dave, because I know StoreForce have a solution called a virtual store visit. Now that's invaluable because it gives them all the information they need to be able to manage that store from a distance. And tools like that are more and more, they're coming on very fast, and they really can help.
Right. You know, I think if I were just to jump in now before you move forward,
Sure.
you know, operators are your army. They're the people that execute, regardless of how crazy the program that comes out of corporate office is. They're the people that are going to somehow make it work at the stores. And the field leaders are sort of the commanders of that army. And the creativity and ingenuity that is in retail right now, I think is wholly vested within the operations group. It is no longer within the merchant or the selector. It's really about how can I get the product in the customer's hands? How can I find creative ways to get them to touch and feel? And I am so proud to be part of the operations world, especially retail, and see our clients just exceed expectations every day.
So I think in the interest of time, we have a lot of questions coming in from the audience. So I'm going to jump ahead here. So we're going to skip this last question set. And we're going to skip this last poll. And here we go with questions for the panel. So I'm just going to give you some of these questions. We'll do sort of a lightning round. And anybody who wants to answer, just maybe raise your hand if you could, and I'll try to call on you. So Keith is saying that inventory levels across a lot of stores still seem like a mess. In many cases, an online store says something is unavailable when I could just walk in and pick up the item on my own. Why are there still disconnects between digital inventory and actual inventory? So who wants to take a crack at that?
I can see Andrew chomping at the bit there.
Andrew, you want to take that? Why do we still have a disconnect?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're back to the old silos question. Too often we end up with ring-fenced inventory that is ring-fenced for online. We have ring-fenced inventory for store. And it needs to just break down those silos. The solution's there to be able to do it. But it's just taking that time to break down some of the silos and get everybody to look at them and look at their inventory as one. Quite often it's difficult as well because where is that person trying to order that from? Is it this particular in this vicinity, or is it closer to another store? So it's not always easy, but as we're getting now to much faster information flows, we're getting real-time data now. Yeah, that is being resolved. It just takes time.
William, do you feel like you've made progress in that area? Not that you guys had this problem, but I'm sure you did, like every other retailer to a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean, inventory continues to be an issue for everyone, and shoes are no different. For us, with the difference between web and in the store, we've done a pretty good job of breaking down those walls and opening up the inventory. But when your levels are so low in certain key products, you have to have some level of a cutoff point where you take it down off of availability for the web. If you have only 3 remaining in the country, the likelihood of it, it could actually not be an inventory. It could be an LP thing, a loss prevention issue. It could not be saleable goods. So generally, you want to have some sort of built-in base of your inventory to pull from, that when you're going to take someone's money on the web, you have enough of those to say, I'm going to be able to fulfill this order more often than not. So generally, the consumer doesn't see that side of it because there's enough there that it rarely ever troubles them. But when it gets as low as things have been over the last year, you have to hit that cutoff point way more often, where you have to make some tough choices and pull some inventory off the web, because you don't want to take a customer's money and then 7 days later say, we weren't able to fulfill that either. That's a bad experience. So you got to walk the line. It's tough.
So real quick, Cathy.
You've also got a problem with really long supply chains. In December, I walked into a department store and it was full of sparkly evening gowns and shoes. For the New Year's Eve party, no one was going to.
Yes. Yeah.
So here's another one on inventory levels from Herb, who says another part of the actual inventory levels not matching the digital levels is safety stock implemented, since inventory record accuracy is generally bad, and to account for a brick and mortar shopper looking for the item at the same time as the online shopper. So that kind of addresses what you guys are talking about. Any thoughts on that? Andrew, were you going to say something on that?
I think that picks up on what William was talking about, really.
Yep, absolutely.
And another one coming in is, this is a little off, but does anybody have any thoughts, particularly the retailers, about our robotics part of the solution in terms of last mile delivery? Even suggesting, could robots be used at curbside or in the distribution centers or back at the stores? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what the next 5 or 10 years brings on that front. I think in distribution centers, you're going to see a lot of tests around robotics and how that can help. You know, there's a lot of discussion and talk about how automation is going to enter into kind of the physical retail world, and I think you're going to see that at some level. You know, I think that the challenge will be, and what I love about retail, particularly right in this moment in time so much, is the experiential aspect of what physical retail does for a brand and what that does for the community you serve.
Absolutely.
And retail done right, I think it's going to be really hard to automate that. I can't quite get my head wrapped around that. There will be automation there of some sort, right? There's going to be technology advances. But I think the retailers that do experiential right and elevate everybody that they have the opportunity to elevate and uplift, I think that's going to be very hard to move away from.
Andrew, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just agree exactly with what Ron's just said. Find in the warehouse, keep them away from customers. Do not let them get into a store customer environment.
Yeah, the store. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dave.
So I just say the store remains the single most important brand touch point. That's when you have the opportunity to thrill the customer. You're not going to do it with a robot. It might be fun. It might be, you know, there being some novelty to it for some period of time. But if that's your differentiator and you're going to turn it over to a robot, then your competitor can go get the same robot and you have no competitive advantage. So it's really about that human interaction. Retail's a human business. Bill?
So interestingly enough, to that point, Rod is saying, I've always said that sales associates are the retailer's points of profitability. It doesn't matter what the home office and the buying team does. It all comes down to the sales associate consummating the transaction and providing customer service, which is what I hear kind of everybody saying. Do you feel, William, that your sales associates are your number one point of difference?
Great retail employees, sales associates are irreplaceable. The reason why people wanted to get back out to malls is to see things and touch things and try them on and all that good stuff. But when retail is done right, it's a better experience than you're ever going to get on a website, and makes you feel good about the money that you spent and the purchase that you made. Our employees are incredible. I'm very, very biased, but you know, they're absolutely the difference between whether we win or lose. We can come up with a lot of stuff here, and that might be good ideas. It might move the needle a little bit, but nowhere near what they're able to do. And so our best service is just to support them at being good at that. And so that's really the way that we try to look at things.
So Sam is asking, did any of you see departmental silos actually eroding in any way, paving the way for greater use of tools that allow for interdepartmental collaboration, space planning, operations, that kind of thing? Cathy, have you seen anything happen on that end?
Absolutely. Right at the beginning, all of these retailers realized that they were going to have to work to get the product to the consumer in a different way, probably at the curb. And here you had these matrixed teams of people working from home, conceivably with people they don't even really know, to make this happen. And the folks at Home Depot were bragging about the fact that they stood up curbside in 7 days across the enterprise with these people from home.
Without robots?
Without robots, not a single one.
Anybody else want to say anything about departmental silos?
So if I'll just jump in. I know we didn't get to the fourth question, which was really my pet peeve. It's the word omnichannel, omnichannel retail. It's a consultant's word. I hope that one day, very soon, that we can just call it retail. You have to operate without silos. You have to operate to find ways to delight and serve the customer in a frictionless way. And that's just called retail now. And the silos, there are still some retailers out there that have strong and solidified silos. But that's a culture thing and a technology in and of itself. And I understand that we're a technology, but a technology company is not going to break down those walls. It has to start with people and has to start with the culture of the retailer.
Yep, absolutely.
Somebody just said that as they were typing the question, we answered it. So that's a good thing. So for the two retailers in the room, this is an interesting question. And William, I think you touched on it before, and maybe Ron did as well. But how will retailers deal with all of the mental health aspects from the pandemic? So how have you treated your store associates differently or tried to help them out?
I can touch on that one from our point of view. And it's just echoing what has already been said here today. I think the frontline associate is the most important part of what we do and how we do it and how we show up in the marketplace, and it really differentiates a brand from others. And it's critically important that they feel safe, they feel supported, they feel comfortable. It's part of our company culture to make sure that we have this uplifting environment for all people, our associates, our members, and our guests. And we have had to shift, and we have had to look at things differently. So, without going into specifics, I think it's just critically important that we all just take a human approach to some of these issues that we've been dealing with and will continue to deal with. I don't think that's going to get any easier anytime soon, but critically important. And things will continue to evolve and change on that front.
Yeah, it's there's no perfect answer, but I think you have to continue to have an open mind to what they need, what we need to do to take care of them. I talked a little bit earlier about making sure the compensation matches up with what we were asking them to do, and continue to look at that for them. And a lot of it for us, we're a sales driving kind of culture, and we look for hard charging workaholic type individuals. And over the last year, that really brings to light that that's not always gonna be the way. And so, more understanding, more work-life balance. No more rub some dirt on it mentality if someone's not just physically not feeling well, but not feeling well. Being open to letting them take some time off and or work a shorter work week or whatever those things are. And I'd like to think we were moving in a good direction over the last couple of years in that way, but this definitely has accelerated us doing a little bit more with that, with making sure coverage is right, and our managers aren't just holding everything together on their own, because it's overwhelming. It's been a long year for everyone, and they've again really been dealing with the public for over a year now. So I think I'd be lying if I said we had it all figured out. So we just have to keep on being open to what that feedback is from them.
So with that, we're starting to run out of time. So I want to remind the audience you can download the white paper from StoreForce to comp or not to comp. You should see that on your panel. And then for the panel, I just want to see if you have 30 seconds worth of last thoughts for each one of you. So could we start with you, Ron? Any last thoughts you want to share with us?
I think I don't remember the exact same, but if you're fortunate, you live in exciting times. And I'm telling you guys, this is a really exciting time to be in physical retail. There was probably a point 10 years ago where I thought, maybe I made the wrong career choice, but I can tell you right now, this is an amazing career choice. And I'm fortunate to work with amazing people, and I think we're all fortunate to have really smart, bright people in retail around us. And I'm all for retail done right. So I know this entire panel is as well. So it's an exciting time.
Cathy, any last thoughts?
Yes, it's not 1989 anymore. Companies that have embraced the future are doing really genuinely exciting things. Look at Walmart, look at Best Buy, look at the guys on our panel, and to look forward.
Andrew?
Yeah, I agree. I think retailing at the moment is probably in its most exciting it's been for a long time. It's always been dynamic. It's incredibly exciting at the moment. The good guys are going to do well. Some people will go out of business, let's be honest, but they're the bad ones. If they're not good, they're not going to survive. Let's drive forward, more theatre, more experiential retailing, make it exciting. Let's get customers back in and enjoy shopping.
And William?
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on it a couple of times. The difference are the people at the stores. There's no other reason really for customers to have kind of forcefully wanted to make their way back into the stores, other than what that experience brings them when done right. I think it's been a eye-opening for everyone who thought that the web was going to completely take over, because I think the last year has proven that it's going to have to all coexist and become one thing. The customer doesn't honestly care whether they purchased from the web or from the store. Even if they're in the store and they purchase from the web, like, none of that really matters to them. The experience does. The goods that they went home with, and their experience with your brand overall is what matters. But the physical store is just as important of a part of that as ever. And there's a lot of data that backs that up over the last year, and I'm excited about that as well.
Dave, any final thoughts?
Maybe two things. One thing that Ron never brought up about Fabletics, they started as an online retailer, and they decided that in order to actually grow, they're going to have to open stores. And William, of course, is managing a fleet of 1,200 plus stores right now. We have a luxury of operating in about 53 countries and see retail results around the world, and we are very excited about how people's returns are happening. The growth that's been in retail in the last 12 months has been incredible, and it's bigger than 2019. I think we're just getting going.
Who'd have thunk it at the beginning of all this, So with that, thank you to William Bennett, Andrew Blatherwick, Cathy Hotka, Dave Loat, Ron Harries, and I want to thank StoreForce for sponsoring this. Hopefully you'll download their white paper in the handouts tab. And then if you could stick around a moment longer and take our survey, we'd love to know what you thought. And with that, thanks to the panel, and we'll see you on the next Retail Wire webinar. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Sure.